in culture and so on. The exam will include two types of texts. First text will be, both of them will be readings, different types of text, different genres of text. So this will be what we shall do. Do you have any questions in connection with the exam consists? Okay. Reading is one of the most important problems in our culture. And of course, the problem is how to read text. Is there any rules? Are there any rules that will give us opportunity to read different texts? Are there any methodology that is important for reading? And I shall try to present you different methodologies of reading, which are critical. What does it mean? Something to be critical. The word critical and criticism does not mean simply to criticize something, to say how something is wrong or well, and so on. Criticizing and criticism are different notions. The notion of criticism is connected with the philosophy of Immanuel Kant, very important German philosopher of the 19th century, and his three critics, the most important, three critical books. The most important book is, of course, criticism of pure reason. So, what is criticism in contemporary sense of the word? What is critical? What is to do some things, to say some critical things? Criticism means to be close to truth. Criticism is connected with the discovery of truth. We are critical because we are connected, we are engaged with finding truth, and of course we need some instruments of its finding. So critical thinking and critical reading is reading which is critical towards other different types of reading. This is very important. So there is critical reading and naive reading. This is very important distinction. In naive reading, we don't know what we read and what we think about it. We read not texts, we read our representations, our thoughts, but text is not presented in reading. Critical reading is reading oriented toward the text, not toward our fantasies, our representations, and our thoughts. We will try to learn how to read a text, not how to read our thoughts and fantasies. Do you understand this? Yes. Yeah.
Which book by Kant did you say was the most important?
Excuse me, which?
Which book by Kant did you say it was most important?
Criticism of Pure Reason. Yes, yes, Kant's philosophy is critical philosophy. because it is dedicated to methods of our knowledge, not just to our knowledge. Because the world is presented towards us, but we see the world in some way, and we should be critical towards this way. We see the world through our eyes, but we don't see our eyes. Critical method is method oriented toward seeing our eyes, not the world. Because the truth is difficult thing, and illusions are a lot. We don't know what we see, our illusions or reality, and we need critical method in order to distinguish these two crucial elements. So, the most important distinction in critical reading is distinction between naive reading, which mixes different things, our fantasies, thoughts, representations, and the text. And very often we don't know whether we read at all, because reading and fantasies are deeply mixed. Reading very often is a metaphorical reality which mixes the outward and the inward reality. They can mix in our representations and thoughts, and we should distinguish them. I will try to convince you that critical reading is reading methodologically argued, methodologically important, not just to read. So, first method of reading, which we'll start with, is the so-called close reading. Close reading. It appeared at the beginning of the 20th century, both in Russia and in England and United States, and of course it is dedicated to the rise of literary theory. Close reading is a term of English and American literary theory. Very important. Children study this method in schools, but unfortunately in Bulgaria we don't study this method, and because our education in literature is to some extent mixed education between national ideology, national history, literary texts, and so on. But close reading gives us an opportunity to distinguish these three things very well. So, what consists this method of? Is right. First element, first rule of this reading is to forget the name of the author. When you read something, you should absolutely forget the name of the author. Why? Because we read his text, not the author. When we read some text by Oscar Wilde, we should forget that this is written by this person. We should try to understand his text, not his life. Because we very often mix our life life of the author and the meanings of the text. And we should try to forget this name. Author's name is absolutely forbidden for close reading. Of course, the second rule is we should forget all authors' biography. The fact that Oscar Wilde was gay man is not important for his words. For his words. The fact that Sylvia Plath was a Jesuit woman and she committed suicide, this is not important. And the fact that Patricia Highsmith was a lesbian was also not important. It was important for her, but not for us. not for her text. This is very typical for close reading. The name of the author, his biography. Very often the biography of the authors are very attractive. And of course we forget that we read texts of these authors, but not their biography. So we should think, and of course we should make as soon as possible efforts to read just text. Yes?
Do you think that since we study the biographies of the authors in Bulgarian education, that this helps or hinders critical reading?
No, it doesn't help critical reading. It doesn't help critical reading because the names and biographies of the authors, they are not important for me. They are beyond the texts. And as a specialist in Bulgarian literature, I should say that between the biography of the Bulgarian poet Chris Lotet and his works, there is a little common. There are a little common things. His texts, they say different things than his biography. So in Bulgarian poet Pale Yavor also, there are no connections between himself and his texts. Why? Because, of course, he committed suicide and so on, but his love stories are very important for Bulgarian culture, but in his texts, he is not credited with his stories. And they, yes.
I just wanted to ask if in close reading we should also forget our own views and thoughts about everything, because when we're reading we have our own point of view and it's a bit hard to just put it aside. And
Yes. This is the second. This is the fourth rule, as long as I think. This is to forget our point of view. Our point of view is not important for me. Of course, we know how important is our point of view, but in science, this is not important. In scientific knowledge, our point of view is not so important. We should try to overcome our point of view. Yeah.
So then critical thinking focuses more on the mechanics of the text rather than the point of the text.
Yes. We will say this a little bit later. But what is important is really overcoming our point of view, our thoughts. And because text is important, not our point of view, we should try to replace our point of view with the point of view of the text. And of course, we should forget one more thing. This is historical context. Historical context is not important. Why? Because historical context can help us to understand this, but just a little bit, because text wanted to construct its own point of view, its own world, and so on. Yeah.
I'm sorry for taking the
No.
point of conversation away again, but why do you think that Bulgarian education basically goes against all those rules?
Yes, because Bulgarian education in literature is based on connection between authors, biography, text, and historical context. It's really a problem. Literary texts, they are not, if the author wanted literary texts, and every text is not author's biography. If the author wanted to present his biography, he could write just his biography. But this is not, the lyrical poem is not author's biography. Very often literary poems appear when the author is separated from his biography. For example, I am sure that Yavor doesn't have any love attention to anybody, and he wrote love poems. The love poems appears when we cannot love, not when we love. Because this is the art of literature. The art of literature means separation between the author and what he presents. Very often. When you are in love, we write not good poems. Just when you are totally isolated from love, we can write something different and something important. For example, German, very important German poet, Austrian poet. Rainer Rilke, he wrote his love poems when he was separated from love stories in his life. This is very interesting element. So, to read means to deconstruct yourself, to commit suicide of your own self, not to approve yourself, and to say that I think so, this is my point of view. No point of view, your point of view should be totally problematized by the text. Critical reading is, first of all, critical reading toward myself. This is very important. So, other questions concerning this? Yes?
Do you suggest for us to always be reading in such a manner, or when we're just reading like a fantasy book, we can immerse ourselves, have our own thoughts about it?
Yeah.
Or is this just for scientific text? Like critical reading is just for scientific text to extract the facts and
No. It can be dedicated to all texts. Every text can be read in this way, in this type of closed reading. Because what is important is the process of reading, and reading itself, and not ourselves. ourselves that we are different from what we read. This is very important to understand. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I know, it's just.
Yes. So, and we should understand that this method is dedicated to the text as kind of language, not as something which consists of the world. The text and the world are different things. This is very important. Why?
Where is the line between the statement that poetry is art or any type of writing is art, and that any type of writing should be read as scientific experiment?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. This is very interesting question, because the poetic self in poetry, we should say this later, is very difficult to distinguish between ordinary self and poetic self. This is very. We don't really know when the poet says I, what he says. He talks about himself or some imaginary self is important here. This is very difficult to distinguish in poetry. But in prose, of course, we can distinguish very well these things. So, important thing, of course, is language. Why language? Because when we mix language and the world, it becomes very dangerous. Paul de Man, one of the very important thinkers of the 20th century, literary thinkers, he says that ideology is when we mix, is the moment of mixing the text and the world. Why? Because very often people receive what is written as something that is presented in the world. But, of course, these things are different. For example, the communism.
So they perceive it as reality?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So the communism in the 20th century is such great mistake, because people, when read Marx, they know that this is reality. And many people died, millions of people died, because of this mixture between text and the world. So we should be very careful. And there is one book, Don Quixote, which tells us this difference between literature and the world. Because what Don Quixote does is it is just to receive reality as a text and reality. So this is really these are really very different things. So we should read text as language construction, not as something which gives us the essence of knowledge or something like that. Yeah.
What does this mean for genres like dystopia, for example,
Yes.
which are written to sort of reflect the world? Because most dystopias are written as a critique of the current status.
That's right. But of course, text has some relation to reality, but we should never forget that text is something different than the reality. And dystopia is really very important genre in contemporary literature, today's literature. For example, Margaret Atwood, many others, authors who are really important for the critical attention towards reality. Yeah. But the language and the world are not one and the same thing. We very often mix them. We have, for example, in the world there is no love. This is just a word. Remember it. We should never find such object as love in the world. If we think critically, love exists only in language. There are no other objects. That's why it's very difficult to distinguish language and the world.
But doesn't our own empathy lets us create and read the words not only as text but as a story as well, and to create a narrative?
Yes, of course, our empathy is important, but the problem is, will be any empathy without language in such a way in which it exists in our, because in the world of animals, empathy is different, if it exists at all. So our language creates a lot of our realities. It is very difficult to distinguish these two things. One of the most important philosophers of the 20th century, and in the epoch of close reading, in the beginning of the 20th century, this is Ludwig Wittgenstein, very important philosopher. In his work entitled Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, he says that we should speak just of things which we can speak of. We cannot speak about love, because love doesn't exist in the world. We cannot speak about beauty, because beauty is just the word. It is not presented like chair or perfume. Yes, we can speak about chairs, but about love and beauty, it is very difficult to say that these things exist out of language.
But yet most of the world is concentrated over God and soul and things that we cannot see. And
that's right. That's why it's very difficult to distinguish language and the world. So we are language created creatures. we are situated in language. That's why we can become mad. Madness is, I think, typical human feature. Because madman, this is just the mixture between language and the world. You understand what language says you, but not the world. This is very difficult to keep this relation between language and the world critically in our mind. That's why we very often become nervous and so on and so on, because language has one very important element which Kant gives us opportunity to see. This is imagination. Imagination can replace the world at all. We can be just in our imagination. The digital reality is typical element of this. So, digital reality presents the reality of language, which is separated from reality, can be totally different from any reality.
So, in a few words, language is dangerous because of how differently it can be interpreted.
Yes, it is dangerous. And also, artificial intellect presents this opportunity, this possibility of language to be totally separated from people. Yes, it can be something autonomous, because language is just like this. And artificial intellect is based on language models. Language models are independent from our knowledge and consciousness. They can be totally separated from us. So this is very dangerous. Language is something important, but also very dangerous because it is source of many illusions. For example, in the novel Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert, an important German writer of the 19th century, it presents how a woman was in love with different love novels, reads them and so on, and receives the reality of these novels as the reality of life. And of course, at the end, she commits suicide. Because she understands that love in the novels and love in life are two very, very different things. Because literary life, literary love is something that is that is dedicated to literary genres and so on, but not to the world. So world and language are two different things. And of course, it is difficult, it is easy to say, but difficult to understand. And critical way of thinking is just the distinguish, it's just the opportunity to distinguish these two elements. It is very difficult. Yeah.
About how love is only a word but doesn't exist and
Yes.
different emotions are the same.
Yes.
Because I study psychology, we had a lecture where we were explaining that there is prime emotions, so to
Yes.
speak, which are universal. But there is also emotions that are specific to different cultures, and therefore can be like very different from culture to culture, because one culture has one word for it,
Yes.
which doesn't exist in another.
Yes. For example, in Arabic language, I know this very well, there are 50 words for love. 50 words. And 50 different types of love. Of course, there is love, mystical love, yes, and so on and so on. There is love between man and a man and a woman, and so on and so on. Sexual love and so on, but different types. In Greek language, 4 types of love. Ancient Greek presents these 4 types. So language and emotions are deeply connected. And I don't think it is possible to distinguish one from another. This is very important. So we should study here in close reading these 2 elements. This just text just as something which is language created by language. And of course, in new criticism is the movement in literature which presents and develops close reading. And there are 2 fallacies very important. One fallacy is intentional fallacy. Intentional fallacy. So, intentional fallacy is when we read some text and don't make the distinction between author's intention and also the intention of the text. You should know that author is not at the center of the text.
And when we do the, when we lack this distinction purposely, is what
Yes.
an intentional fallacy is.
Intentional fallacy, yes.
So like, it's not quite like suspension of disbelief.
Yes, no. This is just a fallacy. This is just something erroneous. Error. Just
I see.
just an error. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm so confused.
So it's an intentional fallacy because every text has an author, but this author is not the text at all. Text has some own specifics. And very often, the author's intention is in conflict with the text. Very often. And very often we don't know what the author's intention is.
In what way the author's intention is opposite of the text?
Yes. Just I will present it. So there is a tragedy by Shakespeare. We know Hamlet, and there is an article written by a very important English and American poet and modernist T.S. Eliot, Thomas Stearns Eliot, who says that the problem of Hamlet is the fact that this personage, doesn't take an action of revenge, because Hamlet is a tragedy of revenge. But he doesn't do this. Yes, and this is some crisis of author's intention. Because the place should be tragedy of revenge, but Hamlet doesn't take any action concerning this element. So author's intention and the text, they are in some conflict. So it is very interesting. There is one important book by one new critical writer, very interesting, and critic William Epson. He wrote a book which you should read, 7 Types of Ambiguity. Types. It is I think, open. You can find this book open on the internet. 7 Types of Ambiguity.
So can you write on the board? I don't know the spelling.
Yes. Just a moment. 7 types.
The name of the author again?
William Epson.
And Emerson.
Epson. Yes. 7 Types of Ambiguity. Yes. Seven types of ambiguity. William Epson. Very important. Epson. Yes, William Epson. was written in 1930 and published in 1930. And one of the most important seventh type of ambiguity is this conflict between author's intention and the intention of the text. Text says something different than the author's intention. For example, there is one view on Hamlet, very important view, which presents the place, which presents Hamlet as a personage who has no right to take the throne, because in Dutch in Dutch government there are two types of giving the power. Yes, first is elective, so the monarch should be elected, and the second is family way. And of course, Hamlet doesn't have any right to pretend for the throne because his mother and her husband received the throne by election. This is the second scene of the place. Yes, of the work. So there are two different. So it is author's intention very often is in conflict with the whole. For example, I think that Don Quixote is written with intention to be a work of satire towards Don Quixote and so on, but it became a tragic way, yes.
Would you say all of this is objective, scientific, or every literary critic can interpret different works in different ways?
No, here we study the methods which are with critical, with all views.
Yes.
Because every interpretation should be based on the text.
But we are speaking about intentions of the text and of the author, which are things that we, in my opinion, we interpret. We cannot put ourselves fully aside and just look at it
Yes.
as it is.
Yes, this is the problem. This is really a problem, and we will see other methods which oppose this method. But of course, this method is important for reading, because it gives us critical way of self-understanding. In 60s, there are, of course, debates against close reading. And today we have in literary theory also the so-called distant reading. And we should speak about this later, the distant reading, not close, but the distant reading. Yes, and very different type of fallacy. Different type of fallacy is so-called emotional fallacy. In new critics' words, it is affective fallacy, intentional fallacy, and affective fallacy. What does it mean? Affective fallacy is the fallacy of the reader. not defensively author. When we read something, we should understand, yes.
So the intentional fallacy is something that the author produces.
Yes, but the affective fallacy is something that the reader
I see.
produces.
Okay, I get it.
Is when we are dedicated to our own emotions in connection with the text. Very often, we cannot separate ourselves from our emotions from the understanding of the text. And affective fallacy is a typical fallacy of the reader. Because very often text says something different than we feel, than our feeling saying about the text. Our feelings can be elusive. We should be concentrated on the words, not on just on our thoughts. Do you understand this? Are there any questions? Okay, 10 minutes break and we'll continue. Just 10 minutes. Yes, yes.
Okay. So for the test, we have to start from Moodle.
No. Just maybe yes, Moodle and also read some text which I will give you.
Oh, okay.
Yes, this is the text. Love's Philosophy by English poet, very important and interesting English poet, Percy Bysshe Shelley, a romantic poet. What is important for this method is to read word by word and verse by verse. We should forget that this poet is really one of the most important English poets of English Romanticism. And to read just text. Yes, maybe please read the text and we shall start. You can read it also.
mountains mingle with the river, and the rivers with the ocean. The winds of heaven mix forever with the sweet emotion.
Thank you. So what we see here, we see here a picture of the world in which all things are connected. Fountains with the river, rivers with the ocean, winds of heaven which mix forever with the sweet emotion. So everything is connected. This is the statement of the text up to this verse. Maybe you to read next 4 verses.
Nothing in the world is single, all things by a law divine, in one spirit meet and mingle, why not I with thine?
Yes, yes, nothing in the world is single, so everything is connected with other things. All things are meet and mingle. And how do you understand this question? Why not I with thine? Yeah. What
Essentially,
does
this
this
first,
question mean?
this first passage is like an argument almost
Yes.
to present why shouldn't my spirit mix with yours if everything else is interconnected.
Yes.
That is the question.
Is that a question that asks or not asks?
Sorry?
Is it the question that asks or doesn't ask?
It's more of a rhetorical question.
Rhetorical question.
As in, it says, why not I would die? So there's obviously, well, I don't know how it is, but there's a certain kind of an assumption that it's not the case.
It's not the case.
And it will continue not being the case.
yes.
But the lyrical character is wondering why not,
When,
and is presenting this argument.
or he says, why not? Does it mean that he says that yes, we should be connected?
Well, yes, but usually one asks why not when they have been denied, right?
Yes.
Somebody says no, and you ask with why not because you're convinced it should happen.
So this part of the text says that everything is connected with everything, but we are not connected, or we should be connected.
To the opinion of the lyrical self.
To the opinions, yes, I can
May
hear
also be a proposal or an offer.
Yes.
And I don't think that if it's a question, not a proposal, it's necessarily like rhetorical.
Yes.
I don't think it's just. I don't think that it could just be the case where the author knows the answer or doesn't.
Does he know the answer?
No,
or
he
not?
doesn't. But I mean, it could be not just the case where he is not actively actually seeking for it and it's kind of rhetorical. It could be entirely seeking for the answer, agonizing why this is the case and
Yes.
not being able to find it.
Yeah. This is very strange because is there a question or not? This is the problem. Maybe to read another part. Maybe you, yeah.
See the mountains kiss high heaven, and the waves clasp one another. No sister flower will be forgiven if it disdains its brother.
Yes. Yes. Everything is connected. Yes. Brother and sister, mountains, heaven, and the next and the last.
And the sunlight clasps the earth, and the moonbeams kiss the sea. With are of this kissing word, if thou kiss not me.
We have again question. How to understand this question? The rhetorical question is question which does not give an answer. The answer is in the question. But here, is this a historical question of course? Is there a rhetorical or not rhetorical question?
Probably not.
Probably not. If a law is not means, what does it mean?
I think that it is a rhetorical question in the means that they are not worth anything.
So, is there a connection between the lyrical self, between the poetic self and his beloved, or not? Is there a connection? Yes.
In my interpretation, there is because there imply replacing the type of connection as the fountains and the river and the ocean, etc.
Yes. If it is rhetorical, if this is a rhetorical question, there is no problem. Of course, everything is connected with everything, and we are connected with you. But if this is not a rhetorical question, everything is connected with everything, but why then you are not connected with me? And if you are not connected with me, then nothing is connected to nothing. And there is no connection at all. You understand? Different elements. Rhetorical question gives us opportunity to me to think that love is the essence of being. But the next reading says that there is no love at all. Because this is just an illusion. If we are not connected. Love is just an illusion if we are not connected. And if we are not connected, nothing is connected with anything. This is just yeah. This is typical for the close reading, and please write this notion. This is ambiguity. Ambiguity. Typical ambiguity. Ambiguity is when we have two senses. Two senses are the best, the rhetorical and non-rhetorical element. And we cannot decide which sense is dominant. Which sense dominates. Whether the sense that says love exists because everything is connected, or the sense that say nothing is connected because there is no love, and there is no love at all. New criticism gives us this opportunity to read these ambiguities. What are the 7 types of ambiguities? And this ambiguity says that we don't have any decision to go out of this. This ambiguity presents us the fact that our point of view is not important, because the text offers us 2 different opposite points of view. And if we read text deeply as a language construction, we should see that 2 different meanings are just the opposite. And no one prevails. So here in ambiguity, we see the essence of the text. The fact that language and the world does not coincide. Yes, they don't coincide. Because here we cannot say what the picture of the text of the world is.
So because we can't name
Yes.
a certain interpretation,
Yes.
we cannot say that this construction
Yes,
of language
yes,
is
yes,
real.
yes.
Okay.
We cannot say that. So the point of view of the text is not clear, and very often is like this. Very often we have ambiguities, not real statements, especially in great literature. In great literature, we don't have just statements, ideologies. It is not clear what is said, what is the essence of things. This is one very important element. So this is very interesting. Our reading is always ambiguity. Yes, and that's why Paul de Man says that we write because we cannot read. Here we meet the impossibility of reading. Ambiguity is the impossibility of reading. Reading is not something possible. If we think philosophically, again deeply, we will see that there is no reading and no reading is possible. Because, first of all, we cannot read ourselves. Just like Oedipus, who didn't know who is he. And namely, he is the killer of his father and the husband of his mother. So that's why because he couldn't read himself. The impossibility of reading presents the fact that we couldn't read ourselves. That we are ambiguities for ourselves, first of all. And our life is ambiguity for us, not the text. This is very important. So reading is not possible. That's why we continue to read. We continue to read because reading is not possible, not because it's possible.
So because we can never make a sort of
Never.
interpretation of the text,
Never, yes.
that
Never.
is why
Yeah, because different meanings,
deterministic reading is on.
yes, and because different meanings are in conflict. They are not harmonious. Harmony doesn't exist. Life does everywhere. Yes.
But doesn't this ambiguity give us a spot to put our own interpretation? And
No. It exactly doesn't give us this spot because our own interpretation is impossible. Ambiguity is impossibility of our interpretation. These are two different elements that we cannot choose. Interpretation means to choose one of the points of view. But there is no such way. Language does not give us opportunity to do this. Yes?
Is it the idea that the different views are both equally valid?
Yes.
And you can't, so even if
You-
you personally
yes.
have a lean towards one,
Yes.
you have to accept that both
Yes.
are equally valid.
Yes, it is impossible to accept. Because it is impossible to accept two different points of view that there is love and there is no love at all. So love's philosophy says that love is something very, very, very difficult to understand. So the impossibility of reading is the typical way of understanding. We should know that our understanding is limited by the language itself. I think that Percy Bysshe Shelley wanted just to create a love poem which says that love is possible because everything is connected with everything. But language creates this great error. because we cannot say whether this is a rhetorical question or a typical question. Because every question, as Paul Deman says, is rhetorical and not rhetorical at the same time. In every question we know the answer and we don't know the answer. Yes?
Do you think that literary works that are translated in any other language than the original one have any value at all?
Yes, yes, it has value. The problem of translation is really difficult, very difficult, because as Walter Benjamin was very important thinker of the 20th century. He has a text entitled "The Task of Translator." You can read this text. It is open, but it says that first of all, language is something translated from another language. So translation is prevails. There is no original and translation. Every text is first of all translated. And here we have translation in this text of the Plato philosophy. Plato's philosophy says that love is connection between different elements. Love is possibility of connecting different elements. And we have Platonic and anti-Platonic tendency here at the same time. So Plato and anti-Plato at the same time, because Persephone was a romantic, he was negative, he was negatively oriented towards the world. He was really a revolutionary, not just naive thinker. Yes. So language is always ambiguity. Always in language we find this very strange element which says that reading is impossible. And that's why we should continue to read. Yes?
Can an argument be made that works that lack ambiguity are not as good as the works that do?
Yes. It is very difficult to find a way out of ambiguity. I tried a lot, and it's really very difficult to of course, not every text is ambiguity. This is not the fact, but many great texts are ambiguities. Hamlet itself, and many others. They are just like that. They give us different opposing views, and we don't have any authority, textual authority, language authority to decide which the need is prevailing. And especially what Bulgarian education in schools does, this is to give us opportunity to read text through author's biography or something, or historical context, just to avoid the ambiguity. Because many Bulgarian texts are typical ambiguities. For example, Hadži Dimitar is an ambiguity between meaning in life and death. The main person which is alive at the same time is that it's not impossible, it's absolutely impossible to say which meaning prevails here. Is it historic? Is it heroical? Is he a hero or not a hero? Understand? Yeah.
Do you think that all books are equally dangerous, or those books who have main character that the reader, the specific reader, associates themselves deeply with their characteristics?
Yes, they are dangerous.
Are more dangerous?
Yes,
Or
I think that they are more dangerous because they give us false ideas and false representations of ourselves. With empathy, we accept them, but very often there are deep conflicts between ourselves and these personages, books, and so on. It is dangerous. Critical reading presents the fact that the book and the world are, or the person or myself, to mix them is very, very difficult. It is dangerous because it is ideology. It is an ideology. All serial killers are associated with literary personages. You should know this. All serial killers present some or do like Napoleon or something like that, like this. And this is very, very, very difficult. For example, Putin associates himself with typical Russian emperors in nuclear age, which is absolutely dangerous. This is because of the fact that he associates himself with the Russian emperors in the Middle Ages. And so on. But we don't live in the Middle Ages today. We live in the nuclear epoch. And Russia is a nuclear state, not a Middle Age kingdom or something like that. Yeah.
Do you think there is a positive to associating yourself with the character, let's say from a book that teaches you something good?
Yes, I think, but you should be very critical. Of course, it's possible, but not at all, and not with heroes, because very, very often we, like Putin, associate ourselves with heroes, with some heroic characters, great warriors, and so on and so on. You see that this association makes so many people to die. They die because of these associations of the kings and so on with such. Yeah. For example, a lot of warriors, politicians associate themselves with Alexander the Great, and this causes a lot of deaths. Yeah.
Do you think that something along the line, even as babies, teaches us or shows us how to associate with characters and makes us a person who would associate themselves with a character, or it happens just even before you're born, like psychology, like something in the brain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very important. But I don't know. You should, yeah.
I think, yeah.
Psychology student.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know about specifically in other cases, but there has been studies with babies where they are presented with a story between two dogs, and one of the dogs is mean to the other one, and typically the kids then get more aggressive towards the one that was mean, and therefore it could be made the case that they're intuitively empathetic and that they associate themselves with the nice dog.
It's very interesting. Yes. It's really interesting. I have 3 kids, and of course they are small and associate themselves with different heroes, and so it is interesting. It's interesting and strange, but also we should be very, very critical.
Is it okay to let kids read stories as kids, or is it better if we have the knowledge to teach them from a young age of critical reading?
Critical reading for the kids should be something very, very different. Yes. Because for them, language and the world are one and the same. Yes. And this is very difficult for them to separate these 2 different realities. Thank you very much. We will continue next time.
Body.